February 24, 12:14 p.m. District Court number 9. Oh, like Mambo number 9. Nice. All right, we got to look at this file. We really should have done it before we came back to court. The court will now reconvene for the trial of Miss Lana Skye. Emma didn't come back. Allow me to call the next witness to the stand. The officer in charge of guarding the evidence room on the day of the crime. Witness, please state your name and occupation. Me, partner? I'm just a wanderer. I'm just a man, same as you, wandering the trails of civilization. Occasionally helping the elderly cross intersections when needed. Yes, we get it. Oh, I know, you're a patrolman. As for my name, if you listen hard enough, you can hear the howling wind calling it out. To be exact, it's Jake Marshall, Your Honor. Howling wind? I've never heard Edgeworth described that way before. Now, Mr. Marshall, let me ask you something. You were in charge of guarding the evidence room on the day the crime took place. Is this correct? According to the papers, partner. What do you mean? A desperado's soul is as boundless as the desert sands. No paper can sum it up. Maybe it's best we get on with this quickly. Please share with us your testimony of the day of the crime. In plain old English. Day of the crime. Witness testimony. My job was to keep a wary eye on that bone orchard. They said I was supposed to make rounds 3 times a day, but that ain't my style. Besides, the room's protected by 2 security systems anyway. If I remember right, I was at a street side saloon at the time it went down. I'm just an innocent traveling man, so if you're out of ammo, it's time I hit the trail. Okay, that wasn't what he asked for. I can't say I particularly care for your attitude. I can't say I care for your beard, but you don't see me complaining. Wait a minute. What do you mean by 2 security systems? I mean, the security cameras and the ID card reader. I reckon even a cowpoke like you knows about those. Yes, well, what about the fingerprint-activated locks on the evidence lockers? Fingerprint-activated locks? What kind of newfangled doohickeys are those? He's not being very helpful. He's not that good with machines or with following orders. Everyone's got their weaknesses now, don't they, Mr. Prosecutor? This one seems like trouble. Okay, Mr. Wright, he's all yours. Okay. Day of the crime. Your job was to keep a wary eye on the bone orchard. How exactly did you keep an eye on the evidence room? I just made sure nothing moved in the security camera monitor. That room's so still, even time dies in there. I was just a caretaker who interred the recordings. You interred them? Videos of nothing aren't useful. When the time would come, I'd erase the tape. If nothing unusual is recorded, tapes are to be erased every 6 hours. That seems like a short amount of time. Each time I'd erase a tape, it felt like I was erasing a part of my life. This guy has a flair for the dramatic, but it isn't going to do him any good. So, in actuality, you don't physically enter the evidence room. Okay. They said you were supposed to make rounds 3 times a day, but you didn't. But you made your rounds on the day of the crime, right? Ain't you heard a word I said, partner? I told you that ain't my style. I'm afraid I don't understand. No desperado I know lets rules get in his way. No desperados I know join the police force. So, Officer Marshall, on the day of the crime, just between you and me, I didn't set foot in the evidence room that day. Oh dear. There was a rubber glove stuck in the victim's locker. Do you know anything about that? Sorry, partner. Can't say I do. I haven't been in that crypt in weeks. How does this guy avoid being fired? Besides, the room's protected by 2 security systems anyway. If I remember right, I was at a street-side saloon at the time it went down. What were you doing in a place like that? I was eating spaghetti. Not even Angel's steak lunches can beat that parlor's Vagnol sepia pasta. I don't know what that means. Do you mean to tell us you abandoned your police duties to eat some noodles? Not all desperados eat tacos, partner. That's not what I meant. I hope this has at least taught you a lesson. That's strange. This is usually where Edgeworth says, "Did you not want a raise this year?" I'm just an innocent traveling man, so if you're out of ammo, it's time I hit the trail. Okay, what are we gonna contradict him? He was in the room, though, because we have his fingerprints. Well, why was his fingerprint? We have your fingerprints, though. God, this is a lot of evidence. Yeah. Officer Marshall, doesn't it strike you as odd? That is, you being called in to testify like this? After all, you weren't in the security room at the time of the crime. And yet, you dragged me down here. Explain yourself, partner. It's quite simple. You left a very large trail behind at the scene. Or, to be exact, a handprint. Huh. Listen real good, partner. Like I said, I'm the caretaker of that crypt. I pay my respects, that is, make my rounds about once a month. It's only natural my fingerprints would be in there. I only wish it were, officer. But you see, your fingerprints were covered in blood. Witness, what's the meaning of this? Your blood-stained fingerprints were at the crime scene? The blood was wiped away. However, a luminol test clearly revealed this. Well, Officer Marshall? It seems to me there ain't a person in this room with a head on his shoulders. Huh? I take it you have an explanation then, Officer Marshall? About the blood-stained fingerprints? Very well, you may begin your testimony about your fingerprints found at the scene of the crime. Like I said, it's only natural for my fingerprints to be in the evidence room. One of them just happened to be at the same place as the blood-stained handprint. The murderer touched the locker where my fingerprint was by chance. The blood stain and the fingerprint are completely unrelated. Or didn't you know the murderer was wearing gloves? See, I had nothing to do with it. How does he know the murderer was wearing gloves? The witness's explanation appears valid, although there's room for doubt. Life wouldn't be fun without any doubt, partner. The defense may now cross-examine the witness. This guy's hiding something. I can feel it. Now's my chance to prove it. Bloodstained fingerprints. Okay, it's only natural for your fingerprints to be in the evidence room. What's the new thing we got? But the print was white. Like, why was it white? That doesn't make sense. I don't know that we need this right now. How do... Alright, let's just press. We gotta press. That's what we have to do before we start contradicting. That's because you... How did you put it? Pay your respects once a month? Yeah, that's right. That and one more thing. That locker happens to be mine. What? What do you mean? I mean what I said, but you're not supposed to have a locker. You're a patrolman. That's the locker I used when I was a detective. The locker I still use. All that's in there now, though, is a heap of broken dreams. I see. It'd be strange if my prints weren't all over that locker. Apparently his fingerprint data was never removed from the locker's programming. He must have been using the fingerprint lock all this time without ever knowing it. Okay, so it's updated to say that it was his locker. Okay. One of them just happened to be at the same place as the blood-stained handprint. So then, what about the bloody handprint? Wasn't mine. It's no mystery. Please explain. My locker is covered with my fingerprints. Just so happened, the murderer touched the locker where my fingerprints was by chance. The chances of that happening are 1,000,000 to 1. On the contrary, one could argue just the opposite. The chances of that not happening are 1,000,000 to 1. Get one thing straight, partner. You ain't gonna get no reward from me with a mere fingerprint. You wanna know why? The blood stain and the fingerprint are completely unrelated. Unrelated? They're as different as night and day. Kinda like cereal and cereal. One's got to do with breakfast, the other's a type of murder. He's right. Although seemingly alike, they're totally different. I don't see what homonyms have to do with this. Didn't you know the murderer was wearing gloves? How do you know the murderer was wearing gloves? How do you know that? Thank you, Phoenix. I may be a loner, but I still do my job. I keep up on the reports. There was a bloodstain at the scene, thought to be left by the murderer. That's right. It was found on Detective's gumshoes locker, though. However, no fingerprints were detected on that handprint. Oh yeah, I think we tried that too. So that would mean the murderer, wearing gloves, happened to place their hand on top of Officer Marshall's fingerprint. That's the only logical conclusion. Are you starting to get the picture, partner? Picture? This seal of blood in the desert, it's just food for the buzzards. There's only one reality. That's this. The security tape. So long as my trial isn't in there, you can't say otherwise. This isn't getting us anywhere, Mr. Wright. Please consider carefully where you're going with this cross-examination. Yes, Your Honor. Now then, continue your testimony, Officer Marshall. Too bad it wasn't me in that video, right, partner? Who says it wasn't you in the video? What do you mean by that? He has a weird statement. You want to tie me to this crime, is that right, partner? If so, that video's the only direct evidence you have. But that video is next to useless. It's full of blind spots. Blind spots? Places you can't see. The camera's panning back and forth. The floor isn't shown. If someone was familiar with the camera's position, they could leave the room without being caught on tape. That's what I said before. It's like they crawled under. We don't have time for your speculations, Mr. Wright. Well, Mr. Wright, if you can show us evidence in this video that indicates Officer Marshall was present, please do so now. Okay. That's fine. We'll find something. Very well. Yep, I can do it. Sure. Allow me to point out your mistake, Officer Marshall. Okay. Tread carefully, Mr. Wright, or you might wind up being the one making the mistake. Now then, let's have another look at the video. Show us this incriminating evidence of the witness. Officer Jake Marshall. Okay. It's probably like way... Okay, so we gotta fast forward through all this. Okay, so there's him. Okay. So this is his locker. The light isn't on, which is fine. I thought there was like a thing hanging out of it. Because when we were there, we couldn't take it out of there. It was like a thing. His face is covered up by Mr. Blue Guy. Okay, so there's that. It's empty. We don't know what's going on the floor. There's a thing! There's a thing! This! What's this? Take that! Bringing our attention back to the security camera is a mistake I'm afraid you'll soon not forget, Officer Marshall. The days are short in Texas, and so are our tempers. Could you sum up what you have to say in 8 words or less? Uh-huh. Very well. You can clearly be seen in this video. Exactly 8 words. Not bad, partner. The key lies in a certain locker shown in the video. Yeah, his locker. That locker with the white cloth sticking out. That was the witness's, I believe. Now then, let's rewind the video a bit. Yeah, I noticed that when we were there the first time. I was like, why is there something sticking out of there? Oh, the white cloth. It's gone. What's the meaning of this, Officer Marshall? When the crime took place, the white cloth wasn't there. Then it suddenly appeared. There's only one explanation. Officer Marshall, you were in the evidence room at the time of the crime. What's more, you opened your locker when the camera was turned away. Order, order! It would seem... Oh, hold your horses! Sorry, partner, but you got the wrong man. So what if my locker was opened? That doesn't mean I'm the one who opened it. The murderer needed to hide something, so he opened a locker and stuck it in. It's not my fault he happened to choose mine. But he isn't the fingerprints! Why is everyone staring at me like I'm a wanted man? Because of the fingerprints! This guy isn't just playing dumb. He really doesn't know. I hate to rain on your parade, but you're the only person who can open that particular locker. Oh yeah? I call your bluff. You say I opened that locker? Now prove it. Fingerprints. Fingerprints. Take that. Fingerprint sensor? We talked about this earlier today. The lockers can only be opened by the detectives they belong to. What kind of crazy talk is this? Well, Detective Gumshoe did mention something about this. In any case, the locks aren't that obvious. There are even some people in the force that don't know about the fingerprint locks. So, Sheriff, what do you have to say in 8 words or less? I only got 1 word for you, partner. No! Order, order! Witness, explain yourself. This is a joke. It's the worst I've ever heard. I assure you this is no joke, Officer Marshall. Now then, please tell us what you were doing in the evidence room at the time of the crime. Olay, please answer the question. What is he now, a bullfighter? That's all right, Officer Marshall. I believe we can figure the rest out from here. We can? Have a look at these floor plans. There is no place for someone to hide in the evidence room. Yet Officer Meekins didn't see Officer Marshall. If that's so, then where was the witness? It seems Mr. Wright has an answer. That's right, the only possible conclusion. Well then, let's hear it. Where was Officer Marshall at the time of the crime? Like here? What do you mean, where was he? Here? Take that! Officer Marshall was standing right here. There? But that's where the victim, Detective Goodman, was. Well, no. Correct. Unless the man wasn't Detective Goodman, yeah. Do we not all believe that right now? I believe the victim in the video is Officer Marshall. It was you dressed up like Detective Goodman. But that's preposterous. Officer Meekins witnessed the detective at the crime scene. Once he saw the man's face, he'd know for sure. No, he wouldn't. May I point out, though, that Officer Meekins did not know Detective Goodman and also said he didn't look at him in the face. He also testified about the man's reaction when confronted. When I entered the evidence room, I asked him to show his card, sir. Yes, how did Detective Goodman respond? He suddenly pulled a knife on me. Something about the officer's story puzzled me. If the man had his ID card, why didn't he just show it? Yes, he would have needed it to enter the evidence room, so he must have been carrying it. The answer is simple. He couldn't show it. As you can see, Detective Goodman's picture is on his ID card. Oh, I get it. If he had showed that, his cover would have been blown. Officer Meekins would have realized the man wasn't Detective Goodman. Do you have anything to say to that, Officer Marshall? You've got quite an imagination, partner. We got a term for that. It's called circumstantial evidence. Circumstantial evidence? He's still denying it. You're gonna have to do better than that to break a detective. Unless you have hard evidence proving I dressed up as the victim. Huh. Can't say I particularly care for your uncooperative disposition. I can't say I care for your beard, but you don't see me complaining. Well, Mr. Wright, do you have any evidence proving beyond a shadow of a doubt that Officer Marshall dressed up as the victim? Well, who am I kidding? I don't have anything like that. I can see the fear in your eyes, partner. Seems you're the one who couldn't take the desert heat. Ah, this can't be happening. It's so obvious he's the one. What can I do? It looks like your lack of experience has finally been exposed. I'll pass on to you what someone told me when I was just starting out. When you've run into a wall with no place to go, return to the basics. The basics. For me, that would be what Mia used to tell me. Phoenix, try thinking outside the box. I shouldn't look for proof that Officer Marshall was in disguise, but rather I should look for evidence that came about because he was in disguise. Why do you think this locker was opened in the first place? What do you mean? There's no reason for Officer Marshall to open his locker at the time of the crime. Yet he did, despite the chance it might be discovered later, as it has been. Which means he didn't originally plan to open his locker. According to the defense's argument, Officer Jake Marshall dressed up as Detective Goodman at the time of the crime. Then, after the crime was committed, he opened his own locker for some unknown reason to stash the trench coat. The fact that a white cloth is sticking out of the locker seems to indicate that he opened it in order to put the cloth inside. So, just what exactly is this piece of cloth? Perhaps the video is the key to all our unanswered questions. I don't have any evidence, so this video is my only shot. Very well, let's take yet another look at the security tape. After committing the crime, the witness opened the locker to put away the white cloth. Please show us why the witness had to open his locker. I think it's the trench coat. Right? He wanted to stash his disguise. What's his face said he got blood all over his shoulder. I thought that meant that it was going to be the coat that Lana was wearing, but that doesn't make sense. Oh, look at him go. Let me fast forward. They're fighting. Oh. Wait. Go back. Blood. For some reason, you disguised yourself as Detective Goodman and entered the evidence room, though I don't know what end. Yet. However, something unexpected happened. Officer Meekins barged in on you. When asked to show your ID card, you pulled a knife on him. However, Officer Meekins panicked, and the white coat you were wearing was soiled with blood. A bloody white coat? You couldn't just walk out like that, so you hid the coat in your locker. Not bad, partner. Now then, Officer Marshall, are you ready to tell us the truth? Looks like I underestimated y'all. I hope you're happy now, Mr. Edgeworth. 2 years ago, if you were only half as persistent then as you are today, we all wouldn't have to be here now, would we? Officer Marshall, tell the court what you did. All of it. All right. It seems the time has come. Marshall's confession. I had to do it that day. I couldn't just stand by and let it die. I stole the detective's ID and dressed like him. I planned to take out the evidence. I wasn't expecting Officer Meekins. I knocked him out. Managed to escape. I knew which areas wouldn't be caught on the camera. There wasn't any murder in the evidence room at 5:15. Obviously. So the supposed victim was really you. But there's one thing I still don't understand. Traces of a large quantity of blood were found on the floor of the evidence room. If no one was murdered, then how could that be? Officer Meekins managed to cut his own hand. My guess is he's the donor. It was way too much blood for such a small donation. We have to cross-examine his confession? I had to do it that day. I couldn't just stand by and let it die. When you say it, you mean... Do you even have to ask, partner? The SL9 incident. 2 years have passed since that case was closed. It was going to completely end with the transferal that day. Not if I have anything to do with it. That incident's not over. But what did you hope to accomplish by sneaking into the evidence room? When a case is closed, only the case's lead detective can look through the evidence. I wanted to have a look at it myself one more time. No matter what the cost. I don't care what anyone says, partner. That case is mine. But Officer Marshall wasn't in charge of that investigation. Why does he care so much about it? That day was my last chance. That's why I stole the detective's ID and dressed like him. I planned to take out the evidence. Why did you disguise yourself as Detective Goodman? If If I didn't make it look like Goodman was carrying out the evidence transferal, I'd be arrested for stealing evidence, which wouldn't get me anywhere. So you did it to fool the security camera. And the detective's ID card? I stole that the morning of the incident. So that really was why Goodman started filling out that lost item report. I returned his ID card. I left it on the floor in the prosecutor's office parking lot. The ID card I found was left there by Officer Marshall. So essentially, you planted evidence. You managed to succeed despite your lack of foresight. What do you mean, partner? I mean the fingerprint activated lock, of course. No matter how well you disguise yourself, you can't change your fingerprints. Under normal circumstances, you wouldn't have been able to open that locker yourself. But he could because a rubber glove just happened to get stuck in the door? That means Detective Goodman must have opened the locker before Officer Marshall. I wasn't expecting Officer Meekins. I knocked him out. You pulled a knife on Officer Meekins and tried to drive him off? Let's just say I was a little surprised. I only planned on being in the evidence room for no more than 5 minutes. I didn't think anyone would actually come in during that short time. Officer Meekins certainly is a one-of-a-million type of person. Mistaking a detective for an intruder and demanding to be shown his ID? I'll have to think a little more about his raise this year. When did Edgeworth get so much influence? Anyway, he threw himself at me. I ended up cutting him slightly. I'm sorry it had to turn out that way. With me knocking him out and everything. By the way, what happened to your knife? You mean this one? I don't know what to say. So you knocked Officer Meekins out and managed to escape. I knew which areas wouldn't be caught on the camera. So you did your research beforehand. Those who go into the desert unprepared don't live long, partner. I didn't think it would make a difference, though. The security tape is erased every 6 hours. If all had gone to plan, no footage would have been left. However, you bloodied your coat in the struggle with Officer Meekins. If someone was in the security room when I came out, the jig would have been up. I opened my locker and stashed it in there. What was Officer Meekins doing during that time? What else? He was sleeping like a baby. So what you're saying is, on that day, there wasn't any murder in the evidence room at 5:15. But the blood found at the scene certainly indicates a crime took place. What are you, blind? The victim shown on that tape is me, and I'm not dead yet, partner. So you stole the evidence from the locker? Actually, no, I didn't. Why not? When I opened the locker, the evidence was already gone. What? Mr. Edgeworth, where is that evidence? It's still missing, Your Honor. Detective Goodman's locker was already empty. Someone else stole the evidence. Officer Marshall, may I ask you one thing? Fire away, partner. It's a free country. Just remember, I'm also free to decide whether or not to answer. Why did you do this? Stealing a detective's ID, injuring a police officer? This is no small offense. Moreover, you're an officer yourself. This will have serious consequences. It can't just be forgiven with a simple cut in salary. Not that salary cuts are ever a valid solution. Like I said, this isn't your case. This one is mine. And I'll do anything it takes to get an answer I'm satisfied with. The witness has an unusual amount of zeal. Let's hear more. I can't just forget the SL9 incident. You know why? Why? That case was solved 2 years ago, wasn't it? That's the reason the evidence was stored in the evidence room. Joe Dark was convicted for his crimes. One thing I can say for sure is he deserved his sentence. I remember that Joe Dark case. It involved serial murders, didn't it? I don't intend to complain about how it turned out, but there's something that still bothers me. Something went down at that trial. Something no one will talk about. What happened? I don't know. That's what I'm trying to find out. Why is he so concerned with the incident? Maybe I should present him with what I think his real reason is. I had a feeling we might appear sooner or later. Everyone involved is related in some way to that case. I'd better take another look at the files. All right. The files. Okay, serial murder. Victims. Oh, Marshall? Neil Marshall was a victim? Neil Marshall. Okay. Does it matter when we do it? I'm pretty sure like that's it, but sometimes it matters. You know why? Because of this? Wait, sometimes it asks us what thing it's on. Victims. Officer Marshall, I think I understand. I think I know why you care so much about the SL9 incident. Sounds like you've been sipping too much cactus juice, partner. I have the SL9 incident file here. The name Marshall is mentioned in here. In a list of murder victims. Neil Marshall. Are you related to this man? Neil Marshall? Yep, I'm sure you've heard the name. 2 years ago, he received the same lousy prosecutor award you got. What? A prosecutor? You must be talking about the King of Prosecutors Award. Now I remember. Prosecutor Neil Marshall. He handled the SL9 case before I did. That's right. He was killed. And the case fell into your hands. But what's his relation to you? He was my brother. He was investigating the murders with Damon Gant, the then Deputy Chief of Police. The group of detectives I was part of worked under them. We were desperate to prosecute the killer. Joe Dark. My brother fought Dark and was killed. That was the first time Dark left behind any evidence. That was all we needed. He was arraigned and incarcerated. The case was finally closed, at least according to the public records. What do you mean? My brother couldn't have been killed by Joe Dark. I knew my brother better than anyone. No one could have beaten him in a fight. And that's it? That's your reason for your insane actions? There's more to my brother's death than what the records say. No matter how much you try to hide it, you can't fool me. Well, at least one thing's for certain. Now we know what happened at the police department on the day of the crime. That was the last day the SL9 case could be reopened. Not satisfied with its resolution, Officer Marshall planned to steal the evidence. Disguising himself as Detective Goodman, he entered the evidence room. Officer Meekins confronted him, so he rendered him unconscious and fled. Yes, this mystery has finally been cleared up. No murder took place at the police department that day. The things that happen by chance never cease to amaze. At exactly the same time as the murder at the prosecutor's office, this fake murder was going on at the police department. Chance? It's gotta be more than just that. So if no one was murdered at the police department on the day of the crime, that means the murder in the prosecutor's office parking lot was the real one. Which in turn means only one person could have committed the crime. Chief Prosecutor Lana Skye. But wait, a verdict wasn't reached in yesterday's trial. Which is why we examined the incident at the police department today. But there's only one reason the defendant was not convicted yesterday. There yet remained the mystery of the simultaneous murder at the police department. Seems to me this boy's got the draw on you, partner. All of the mysteries of the police department have been resolved, no doubt about it. Our sole murder took place at the prosecutor's office. The only suspect is Lana Skye, and the testimony of Miss Angel Star is completely incontestable. You have a response? Make it a single word or less. I rest my case. Seems this trial has reached its conclusion. There's no room for doubt. Well done, Mr. Wright. Thanks to you, I didn't need to waste my time disproving the alleged murder at the police department. There's no doubt what I proved today is true. The apparent murder on the security camera's tape really was fake. But I didn't realize that would end up proving Lana guilty. Now then, time for the verdict has arrived. This court finds the defendant Your Honor! Wait! Emma! The defense has an objection! A scientific objection! Right? What do you mean, right? Mr. Wright, are you this girl's guardian? Your Honor, in a sense, please, Your Honor, all I'm asking is for a minute of your time. Please hear me out. Mr. Edgeworth, please. I don't want to leave any loose ends. You want a minute? I'll give you 3. Aw, that's nice. I was kind of in shock. I mean, finding out the SL9 incident referred to the Joe Dart killings. Now that she mentions it, the names of both Skye sisters were in that file. But that's when I figured it out. I mean, what Officer Marshall was trying to do that day. So I knew his fingerprints had nothing to do with the crime. That left only one thing, the other handprint. You mean the traces of blood found on Detective Gumshoe's locker? But no fingerprints were found on it, right? No, but I figured if I examined it scientifically, I'm sure to find a clue. So I ran over there and looked at it again. So, did you find something? No. Huh? Sorry, I guess I'm not much of a scientific investigator after all. Is that all? Please don't be mad. I'm just a high school student. And I'm just an attorney. But Mr. Wright, those traces of blood are the only clue we have. If we can't find something wrong with them, please, Mr. Wright, you're a professional. If anyone can save Lana, it's you. Me? Oh boy. Time's up. Now then, Mr. Wright, with regard to the incident at the police department, does any reasonable doubt remain? It appears the defense is troubled by the other blood mark. We are troubled by it. Looking at the floor plans, a handprint was discovered around here. Is there a problem with this? Mr. Wright, I'm sorry I can't be of more use. But still, if you can't find anything wrong with that blood mark, Lana will be... Please answer my question, Mr. Wright. We don't have all day. Yes, Your Honor. If ever I've needed it to concentrate, it's now. What could be wrong with that handprint on Detective Gumshoe's locker? Could there be something I'm missing? Yeah, sure. Object, object. We just always object first and think later. The handprint left at the crime scene clearly shows a contradiction. And the only thing that seems clear is you're grasping, Mr. Wright. You've been staring pretty intently at those floor plans. Tell me, is there a problem with them? Yes, this is strange. Take a good look at these floor plans. Something is missing. Missing? You mean something that hasn't been drawn on here? The badger? Something that when drawn will completely change the meaning of the blood mark. Are you talking about the blue badger? Let us pray the defense isn't simply trying to buy time. I am, but like also, are you talking about the badger? With all this evidence here, there's gotta be something I can use. The question is, what item can prove something is missing in the floor plans? Is it the badger? What about that piece of plywood? The blue badger, mascot of the police force, defender of truth, guardian of proof. Explain yourself, Mr. Wright. Please look at the floor plans of the crime scene. The blue badger is not here. So? So watch what happens when we put him in. Yeah, he blocked that locker we didn't see on the tape. This is where he was dancing at the time of the crime. Well, what? That's right. So long as the blue badger is dancing here, it would be impossible to place a handprint at this spot on the locker. What? So that means, just what exactly does that mean? It means it can't be done. What are you saying? Blood traces were undeniably found on that locker. Don't look at me. I didn't put it there. Mr. Wright, think it through scientifically. Emma, on that afternoon, Officer Meekins was the one who brought the blue badger to the evidence room, right? After he put it down, it would be impossible to leave a handprint on that locker. So that must mean this blood mark was left there before the blue badger was brought in. Just one moment. I will not allow such far-fetched balderdash in my courtroom. It may sound far-fetched, Your Honor, but it's the only possible explanation. On February 21st, in the police department's evidence room, blood was spilled not once, but twice. But how? One time was captured on this tape, taken by the security camera. Officer Meekins cut his hand, from which a trivial amount of blood fell. The problem is, the other time, someone bled prior to the struggle shown on this tape. It had to have been Detective Goodman when he was really murdered. That's ridiculous. I refuse to accept your absurd claim. The murder portrayed in the security tape has been proven to be a fake. However, that does not explain the blood mark found on the locker. So then, assuming this murder you purport really happened, when did that take place? I demand you show evidence that proves when it occurred. When did the first incident occur? Didn't the autopsy say he died within an hour of 4 p.m.? I thought that was weird that they went that far back and said he died within an hour of 4 p.m. To summarize, the defense claims that prior to Officer Meekins being cut by Jake Marshall, who was posing as Detective Goodman, another incident took place in that evidence room. That's right, the blood mark on the locker proves this. Very well, then tell us. When did this first incident occur? As Mr. Edgeworth said, proof must be presented. Proof that shows when the murder took place. There's only one piece of evidence that can show that. Now then, will the defense please present its evidence? What shows when the first crime took place? I think it's his autopsy report. He said died within an hour and a half of 4 p.m. So I'm going with that. This is the proof. It's quite simple, you see. If it's so simple, then don't get it wrong. Huh? If hot was acceptable excuse, we wouldn't need police. What do you mean? The first crime took place before the blue badger was brought to the room, right? Say, when was the blue badger brought there anyway? Oh, don't we have a Thank you, I'm dumb. Yeah. Hold on. We do have that. Sorry, I got excited. This one. If the crime took place inside the evidence room, then the killer would have had to enter it. And in order to do so, an ID card would have been required. An ID card. Oh, the ID card record. Officer Meekins brought the Blue Badger panel into the evidence room at, let's see here, 4:50 p.m. If the crime took place before that time, then it would be 4:40 p.m. Ah! Ah! Miles Edgeworth! Just what have you done? I never would have figured you had the nerve, boy. Drop the act, witness. It doesn't take a lot of thought to figure out it couldn't have been me. Huh. Nope, I ain't getting it. I'm afraid I don't understand either. It's clear from the luminol test the blood was there. However, when the second crime took place, both Officer Meekins and Officer Marshall failed to notice the blood. That means the blood from the first crime was wiped away by the real murderer. I would have had just 10 minutes to murder the victim, carry his body away, and clean up the blood. Yeah, but who's 7777? Like, that's been blank this whole time, and it's also very weird. Unfortunately, that's physically impossible. That would mean the crime must have taken place before Mr. Edgeworth entered the evidence room. Let's look at the chart again. Yeah, there's a blank. There's only one other card number remaining, 777777. Talk about a lucky number. But wait, that doesn't make sense. How could Detective Goodman have entered the evidence room? Since there's no record of his card being used beforehand, he must have entered along with the real murderer. That's the only plausible explanation. He went in with 777777. Mr. Edgeworth, please look into this ASAP. Find out whose ID number is 777777. That's 1 7 too many, Your Honor. Unfortunately, I'm unable to look up the owner of that ID card, at least at present. What? Explain yourself, son. The ID number 777777 belongs to someone with a rank of captain or higher. Someone who is a so-called executive officer. We don't have the authority to inquire into such a person's identity. But that's ridiculous. Just how... I'm not finished talking, Mr. Wright. There is one situation in which we can be granted such authority. If an official charge filed against an executive is accepted. An official charge? You're all alike, aren't you? With your cover-ups and your forgeries. That's how the prosecutor's office operates. I take pride in my work, Officer Marshall. I would appreciate it if you would keep your slander to yourself. Slander, is it? Okay. Let me ask a question. Yes? No, not to you. To her, the defendant sitting over there. Your own little executive. Lana? Don't be stupid. She's been charged with murder. Of course we've looked up her ID number. And it's not 777777. Don't play me for a fool, partner. That's not what I want to ask. All I want to know is one thing about that incident. Yes, all 9 incident? Answer me this, Chief Prosecutor. In that trial 2 years ago, did you really only use legitimate evidence? Do you need the witness to repeat his question, Chief Prosecutor? I heard him fine, Mr. Edgeworth. 2 years ago, I was in charge of the prosecution for that trial. At the time, occasionally, we felt the powerlessness of the law. At least, I did. Lana, I became a prosecutor in order to suppress crime with the law, but before I realized it, we were the ones being suppressed by the law. Defendant, just what are you saying? I'll ask you again, Chief Prosecutor. During that trial 2 years ago, did you really present all the evidence in court? Can you look me, an investigator in that crime, in the eye and say that you did? Chief Prosecutor, you didn't. I don't have to, Officer Marshall. Why wouldn't you answer him? Drastic crimes require drastic measures. That's just the way it is. We did what we had to in order for him to get the verdict he deserved. But Lana, even if it involved forging evidence. See? That's what I'm talking about. No. No! Order, order, order! Lana's remarks caused such a stir. The chaos in the courtroom could not be quelled. The conclusion of the trial would have to wait until the following day. To be continued.